Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Winnipeg and the University of Winnipeg, my hometown. So happy to be here with you. My name is Marcy Marcusa. I host CBC Radio 1's morning show here in Winnipeg, and it's a pleasure to have this meeting held in the heart of the country here in our city. I will be your co-MC for today, as you can see. Welcome to our meeting at the U of W, and I want to welcome people, of course, all across Canada who are tuned into our webcast to watch what happens in the city today. And I'm up here with Carla. Good morning, good afternoon.
Bonjour, merci. Alors, bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Je me présente. Mon nom est Carla Oliveira. Je suis la journaliste présentatrice du téléjournal Manitoba et je serai votre co-animatrice avec Marcy aujourd'hui. Nous sommes très contentes d'être ici aujourd'hui en direct de l'Université de Winnipeg. Et ça semble être un événement assez populaire. On a beaucoup de gens avec nous. Il y a des gens jusqu'au balcon. Alors, j'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue, bien sûr, à tout le monde qui est ici avec nous aujourd'hui, ainsi que toutes les personnes qui nous suivent en web diffusion.
As well, and on the web, I would like to point out the presence here of the CBC people who are here, and we also have here Dr. Annette Trimby, who is President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Winnipeg.
This year's event and for the annual public meeting this year, part of CBC Radio Canada's role is, of course, to be a storyteller and to promote your stories. Of course, it's what we hope to do as journalists every day, is to reflect your Canada. And so this year we're offering part of our annual public meeting to hear stories from the community, to be a platform for the community. And to that end, we're going to hear from people who are proud of their accomplishments right from the grassroots. We have a special panel of leaders, and our theme this afternoon is Ignite, Inspire, and Invite. And you will meet 4 young leaders from here in Winnipeg. Many of them I've had on the morning show. They have great things to tell us. I promise you, you will leave here changed after hearing what they've been able to do in their lives. And they certainly have a passion for their community. So we look forward to that panel today.
Alors, l'accent sera vraiment mis sur les jeunes.
We will be putting the accent on youth today. We will be hearing a few of them, how they get involved, how they changed the world in their own way, and you'll see that things are going for the best. So after the discussion, there's a question period that will follow, and you will be invited to talk to some of the members of the senior management of CBC Radio-Canada. It's a very important segment for this meeting, and it will be your turn to speak and put questions at that time, and we will accept questions directly here from the room, as well as questions that are put through email and Twitter. So we would ask you to keep those questions short and give the possibility to as many people as possible to participate in this. So for those who are following us online, please send your questions starting today at 8 p.m. at CBCCA or by Twitter. APM CBCCA or Twitter. And for those who are on Twitter, you can use hashtag CBC Community.
Hashtag CBC Community.
And if you're anything like me, you hope that this hashtag will just come up automatically after a few times and it'll help you get the question in, because sometimes I'm slow with my thumbs. But hashtag CBC Community is what you should use. So before we begin, as is customary here in Winnipeg, we would like to invite Hector Pierre, who is elder in residence here at the University of Winnipeg, to do an opening prayer and welcome us to Treaty 1 territory.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Kishamana too. Now we can go new additional cause. Man gun do them. Object to make which the Russian no gum Convocation Hall, the Shinaka day. C'est moi, Anissa, qui m'a dit que Namia Bangi, non comme. Bonjour, 31, Anishna Bay, Anishnin. Bonjour, 31, Aki. Jinga Dushna, Canada, what is a jigno gum? She go, Jinga Dushna on the CBC radio, Biabacos. Object Chimigwich, Chimanatu. Jinga Dushna on cannot get go down gum. Object Chimigwich. Object Chimigwich, Kichmanatu. Is it done away, Kagi the window gum. Object Chimigwich. Way, near this. What is it? Be artist no gum. Object Chimigwich, Kichmanatu. Oh.
Do you need a hand? Thank you to Hector for greeting us here this afternoon and agreeing to meet with us today and to welcoming all of us to these treaty lands. And now we formally begin. I would like to welcome to the podium Rémi Racine, Chair of CBC Radio Canada's Board of Directors.
Alors, bonjour, bienvenue à l'Assemblée publique.
Good afternoon. Welcome to CBC Radio Canada's meeting. Welcome to you all who are following us on the web. I'm happy to be here with you at the University of Winnipeg.
Really our future. Several members of our board of directors are here today in the room. I'd like to wish a special welcome to Rob Jeffrey and Norman May, as well as Marnie Larkin, who is from Winnipeg. Voilà près de 80 ans que les Canadiens se tournent avec confiance vers CBC.
For almost 80 years, Canadians have turned to CBC Radio-Canada as a trusted companion in their daily lives. We passionately believe in the public broadcaster's mission: express Canadian culture and enrich the lives of citizens through a wide range of content that informs, enlightens, and entertains. Over the past few years, broadcasting and media consumption patterns have been changing at an unprecedented pace. The board and senior management remain committed to working together to ensure that CBC Radio-Canada stays relevant and as vital as ever for future generations.
Strategy 2020 to help us accelerate our shift to digital. CBC Radio-Canada is leveraging new technology like never before to provide Canadians with the content they want, when and how they want it. We also expanded our offering on TV and radio and the web, bring Canadians the best programming from this country and around the world. Our use of social media and mobile platforms also brought us closer to many of the communities we serve. Cela dit, le changement, surtout de cette magnitude.
That said, change of this magnitude is never easy, and the past year has been an especially difficult one. Yet the transformation underway is essential for CBC Radio-Canada to continue to be the public broadcaster that Canadians can count on, not just today, but for many years to come. We have to change the way we do things and develop our resources and our economy.
Our 2020 plan is a significant step towards reaching our goals of connecting with Canadians where they are. With that, I'd like to introduce our President and CEO, M. Hubert Lacroix, who will present you with our snapshot of the public broadcasting current situation and future direction. Hubert.
Merci, Rémi. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you, Remy.
To our annual meeting. Thank you all for coming. Welcome also to those who are joining us online. And a very special thank you to Annette Trimby, Dr. Annette Trimby, and the great staff at U of W who have welcomed us with open arms in this great, great hall. As you've heard and as you've seen, our theme this year is Invite, Ignite, and Inspire. Fitting then that we do this annual public meeting in Winnipeg, in the heart of Winnipeg. The transformation which is happening here is quite remarkable. New airport, a new football stadium. Your hockey team's actually looking like a contender again. Hey, Montreal, remember? Ongoing improvement to Assibonnem Park, Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Actually, everything's pretty incredible, and you can feel the confidence. Something's happening here in Winnipeg. Je dis souvent qu'on ne peut pas avoir un radiodiffuseur public.
I often say that we cannot have a public broadcaster without a public. That's what's happening here today. Your excitement, your stories, your experiences, your ideas about the future. CBC Radio Canada exists to make sure those things live and are shared in a public space for you and for the rest of the country. In that spirit, we're trying something new this year. We're giving part of the meeting over to this community. And you shouldn't be surprised, because this is the essence of what we do. We bring people together, we connect them with others, and we see what happens. So my remarks will be short. Approfondir notre relation avec les Canadiens, voilà le sens de la transformation qui a lieu à CBC Radio-Canada. Vous utilisez tout au long de la journée votre téléphone intelligent ou votre tablette pour avoir de l'information sur votre communauté et sur votre langue et sur votre monde. Notre défi est de trouver une manière d'évoluer assez vite pour rester pertinent à vos yeux. N'oubliez pas que 70% des Canadiens possèdent un téléphone intelligent, sans pour autant en abandonner d'autres.
Each week, watch live in front of their television set 27 hours of television. And we got to do all of this with shrinking resources. We launched our strategic plan towards 2020 about 15 months ago. The transformation's not been easy. Some Canadians, including many of our own employees, worried that it was simply a cost-cutting exercise that would mean fewer programs, fewer services, and a smaller, weaker public broadcaster. In fact, everything that we have done over the last months has been about reinventing CBC Radio-Canada, about making sure that we can continue to deliver on our mandate in this increasingly connected world while, at the same time, finding ways to maximize our revenues and resources, the ones that we need to do this. It's a transformation, by the way, that every public broadcaster in the world is going through. We still have our challenges, but our plan is starting to show results. Our regional news services, for example, are an example of what we are actually doing to change. On October 5, CBC will be launching enhanced news services specifically for digital and mobile users. And instead of 90 minutes of local news on television, we're focusing on 30 or 60 minutes at supper time, and you know that in Winnipeg it's 60 minutes. But we're adding local TV news inserts every hour, all evening long. Radio-Canada, on its side, has boosted its regional news with multi-screen digital content up to 18 hours a day. They call it from bonjour to bonsoir, every day. This is one more way that we are going to interact, co-create, and engage with you wherever you are. Now, it's an annual public meeting. You should expect some conversations about numbers. Because of the election, our annual report has not yet been tabled in Parliament, because there's no Parliament to table it in. However, I can talk to you about our first quarter financial results for the 3 months ending June 30th. Nous avons stabilisé notre situation financière, malgré une baisse dans toute l'industrie des revenus publicitaires de la télévision. Nous y sommes arrivés en réduisant nos dépenses de 105 millions de dollars, ce qui a largement compensé la baisse des revenus,
which more than offset the 74 million decrease in revenues, largely due to the loss of hockey. However, we are keeping a close eye on our financial position given the decline in the advertising market. Something important to highlight is that in 2015, we were able to reinvest $23 million from our savings into Canadian programs, thanks to our savings realized by our cost reduction plans. It's the first time since 2009 that we have been able to reinvest in our programs. So I guess I could say we haven't been bored to death just yet. And I'm saying this with a smile because you might have heard of the reactions set off by the analogy of the boiling frog that I have used in my speech to the Public Broadcasters International earlier this month. That meeting took place in Munich, Germany. That picture of the frog seems to have struck a chord. The point I was making was this one. We, public broadcasters of the whole world, have been focusing during the last years on managing each crisis, each reduction in funding, each drop in revenue, each challenge, because that is what public institutions are expected to do. And, like the frog put in cold water that is slowly heated, we've resisted telling people that we risk being bored to death by focusing on the respect of our daily challenges. We have not said high and loud that we risked to be bored. The risk is real, and I think public institutions have a duty to inform the people they serve about the threats they face. C'est pour ça que j'ai parlé d'un système de radiodiffusion.
and the need for a new revenue model for the whole of our industry. A model that can provide the services that Canadians need. In our case, this means a modern public space free from government, free for corporate and commercial interests. A space where the ideas and stories Canadians care about, the things that make us Canadians, are shared. We can't do this without you. So, we're going to start a conversation about our future with you, about the changes that are happening in the way that you consume our content, about our services. And we're all going to have to decide how we fund this. Do we fund it in a different way? Because without a robust and stable funding model, all the things that we are trying to do at CBC Radio-Canada, they will be hostage to the need to manage the financial emergency of the moment. Canadians need to be part of that discussion. They need to have a conversation about whether Canadian stories, Canadian drama, Canadian local news, Canadian music is something that matters to them. And they need to hear what kind of a public broadcaster they could have in the future. We inform Canadians and we share Canadian stories. That helps build social adhesion. And as we watch countries struggling with diverse multilingual communities, the importance of that role here in Canada cannot be undervalued. Nous avons fait des progrès extraordinaires dans notre façon de gérer la transformation de CBC Radio-Canada. Mais nous devons en faire encore plus et nous devons le faire plus rapidement. L'univers connecté offre de nouvelles occasions pour nous d'engager la conversation avec les citoyens et de partager notre culture. Nous voyons tout le potentiel de nos plateformes numériques pour échanger et pour nous rapprocher des Canadiens de nouvelles façons. We have ambitious goals. By 2020, we want to have doubled our digital reach so that 18 million Canadians, 1 out of 2, will use CBC Radio-Canada's digital services each month. We also want 3 out of 4 Canadians, and that's up from 1 out of 2, so 75% of Canadians, to tell us in our surveys that CBC Radio-Canada is very important to them personally. Yes, this is ambitious, but yes, I strongly believe that they are achievable. I think that is what Canadians expect of us. I want to engage Canadians and policymakers to make that happen. We want to do more, not less. We cannot shrink the public broadcaster to greatness. So, I want to take advantage of the energy and the optimism in communities like this one in Winnipeg, and I hope that we will hear from you on those matters. In the meantime, please enjoy today's events and these extraordinary young people. Thank you for your time.
Merci, Monsieur Lacroix. Nous allons vous...
Thanks, Mr. Lacroix. We're going to see you again later for the third part of this meeting. We just finished the first part, and now we're leaving for the second part.
And this is what I call the part that really excites me, because as I mentioned, on our panel today we have 4 young Winnipeggers who are going to tell us their story. Leaders. These are people here that are going to tell us exactly what they've been doing in their communities. And in a moment we'll invite them here on stage formally. Each one of them has been working in different ways. Some of them volunteer their time. Some of them are with organizations. Some of them were mentored and now have turned into mentors themselves. All of them inspire us and ignite these kinds of conversations that we're talking about across the country. So let's begin by meeting our 4 young Winnipeggers. First up is Erica Daniels. Erica Daniels is the winner of the 2013 Manitoba Aboriginal Achievement Award in Creative Arts, as well as the City of Winnipeg 2012 Youth Role Model Award in Creative Arts. She's currently the technical assistant and youth facilitator for the Just TV project. That is an outreach project at the Broadway Neighborhood Center, which is part of our city's core. She now owns and operates her own production company. Let's leave the auditorium for a moment and take you into Erica's neighborhood.
It's okay, I grew up very disconnected from my culture. I didn't really know about the history of Indigenous people and where I came from.
Roll it around.
And I always kind of felt a little bit ashamed of who I was, because all you see are the negative stereotypes.
Right on the poles, yeah, right on the poles.
As a young teen in high school, I went through a lot of the struggles with drugs and alcohol. One of my teachers, she invited me to a community cleanup at the Broadway Neighborhood Center. They had a group of young Aboriginal men performing on a stage. Seeing young people who looked like me doing something so courageous like that, it just really inspired me. When I was 16, I attended my first ceremony, and that's when I started learning more about the history of Indigenous people. I started learning from the elders, and that really started building my pride in who I was. I worked my way up to being a mentor. I am now an employee at the Broadway Neighborhood Center. Okay, guys, let's do this. Oh, I absolutely love working with these young people. I see myself when I look at them. I went through a lot of the struggles that they're going through.
But I have something to say first.
With the young Aboriginal people that come through those doors. Have you ever been to the sacred site? When I start telling them about the different things that I've seen through ceremony, I feel like I belong somewhere. Like, you could just see their eyes light up. Yeah, like they don't know anything about their culture. There's so much energy on that land. It gives me pride in knowing that I could help change the lives of these young people. It just amazes me how much our people are working to change the future for our next generation. And that really inspires me to want to work harder to help our community rise. I want to be a voice to be able to change the future for our next generations.
You're on your way to making that change, I tell you. Everyone, Erica Daniels.
Nous avons tout un panel.
We have a whole panel. You see, you're going to clap a lot today. Our next guest comes from Congo. He grew up in a musician's family in a small town called Bukavu. It's not a surprise that Trésor Namouira became a hip-hop artist. When he immigrated to Winnipeg with his family only 4 years ago, he gave himself the mission to inspire harmony, unity, and diversity through his own musical style. His songs talk about current subjects and sometimes some issues like drugs and bullying. I would invite you to listen to this video, which will tell us more about Trésor.
Mon nom, c'est Trésor Namouira. La vidéo Peg City, c'est au fait un hommage à Winnipeg City parce que j'ai trouvé ma vie, mon amoureuse, et je vais faire ma vie ici.
Jibu, tell me what you want to write.
En 2011, j'ai réalisé ici au Manitoba qu'il y avait un besoin d'encadrement de la jeunesse pendant la période d'été.
Is everybody ready?
On a créé un programme avec l'entreprise éducative culturelle Namura Fox.
Alors, on commence par Just Be.
I feel like every time I close my eyes, all I see is fame.
Et ça leur aide à produire leur propre musique, celle qu'ils ont toujours rêvé à faire.
As a method to send messages to children.
Ça leur aide à avoir la confiance en soi.
You got a dream?
Pour créer quelque chose, je voulais juste initier l'esprit de création dans ces jeunes-là. L'idée, c'est de produire un album.
Just don't quit, you gotta try harder.
Une partie va aller aider les orphelins en Afrique et une partie va soutenir encore leur carrière musicale. Je viens d'une famille qui a traversé beaucoup des épreuves et je connais un besoin qu'on a, c'est le besoin de l'éducation. Je vais lancer un deuxième album, travailler avec mes sœurs. La partie de cet argent va contribuer toujours pour la formation de cette jeunesse qu'on est en train d'encadrer, mais aussi à la jeunesse en Afrique pour qu'ils continuent toujours leurs études.
Okay, voilà.
C'est juste une façon d'unir les gens, essayer de vivre ensemble, essayer de promouvoir les talents qu'on peut trouver, essayer d'aider si on peut, essayer de comprendre d'autres cultures et aimer ton prochain comme tu t'aimes toi-même. Voilà.
Bravo les filles, bravo, bravo, bravo.
Mesdames et messieurs, c'est donc Trésor Namouira.
Our next panelist is someone I met in a cold Winnipeg morning. I said, can you meet me a couple blocks from here at the U of W? There's been a young girl who was sexually assaulted on a playground. It was just a horrific story for our city, and Jamil said, absolutely, because we have to do better. And boy, has he been part of doing better. Jamil Mahmood was born and raised here in Winnipeg. He enrolled in the International Development Program here at the U of W. Now that led him to work with the landless people of Pakistan. He also has worked with street kids in Ecuador. But with Jamil's credentials, even though he could work anywhere in the world, he works here in his hometown. His Spence community, as I've mentioned, is just a few blocks from our campus today at the University of Winnipeg. Let's go there now.
Our community is vibrant. It's dynamic. It's very diverse. Nice. While it has its challenges, I think it has more opportunities than just challenges. It's the best community in the city. Maybe I'm a little biased, but living in a lower income community, you can be very isolating. If you have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs to make ends meet, support your family. So we work really hard on having a lot of community events where people can come and bring their whole family, and just the simple things of opening up a space and making it friendly and inviting and giving people food and opportunity to connect and share.
You busy?
I'm always busy.
Seeing the community growing through this opportunity to just engage and have positive relationships in their neighborhood.
She's the best.
The thing that I always love is that you give people even the tiniest opportunities and they make the best of it. We have a kids garden behind the rec center.
Which is your favorite garden bed?
We started just showing kids how to grow vegetables.
Tomatoes.
Within a season or 2,
Oh, I see some.
we were seeing kids bringing in lettuce to the program and saying, let's have salad today.
These are onions.
We have a garage that we run a tool lending library out of. Kasia Koza, who's a local graffiti artist. He's going to mentor youth to do their own panels on the garage. So the youth will develop those skills, but also be able to express themselves in our community.
To me, this guy has opened his heart to the community, and he's opened his heart to the people, and he's for the people. He's becoming a great community leader.
Yeah, good seeing you.
It's like watching a plant grow, right? You plant a seed and you water it, you put all your energy and love into it.
Eat it, it's good.
Yeah. And then you see it blossom into a recreation center full of kids or new housing projects. or a new community space, a new park, right? But just being a part of that is a huge thing to be proud of.
Il me fait maintenant très plaisir.
It's now my huge pleasure to introduce you a former colleague from CBC. She's a Métis Franco-Manitoban. Her name is Janelle Wookie. Her multicultural roots explain in part her documentarist passion. Born and raised in the Canadian prairies, she makes movies with her brother since she's very young. Let's learn a little more about her work.
Je pense que le tout pour moi a commencé quand j'étais jeune. J'ai toujours adoré être devant la caméra. Moi et mon frère, on jouait avec la caméra de notre père.
He's Michael Moore.
Mon amour pour le documentaire a commencé avec le film Bowling for Columbine. Ça m'a frappé comme wow! C'est un film qui est divertissant, qui est intéressant, qui m'informe sur quelque chose d'important. J'ai fait des études postsecondaires à Red River College dans le programme Creative Communications, qui est un programme de journalisme. J'ai choisi de produire un documentaire sur ma mère et sur son héritage métis et le fait qu'elle n'en était pas fière, elle l'avait caché. Et puis c'est vraiment ce qui a marqué le début de ma carrière. Alors dans le film, c'est moi qui est en train de mener ma mère vers son identité métisse. En arrière-scène, ce qui se passait vraiment, c'est que moi aussi, j'étais juste en train de découvrir moi-même ma propre identité métisse.
It was the worst flood I ever seen.
Alors le premier film qu'on a coproduit comme producteur indépendant avec Wookie Films, c'était le film Treading Water.
We don't know when we're going to go home or where home is going to be.
Pour nous, c'était vraiment important de leur donner une voix parce que l'histoire avait été tellement compliquée dans les médias. Une des choses qui me passionne le plus dans le documentaire, c'est l'occasion de clarifier certaines choses qui sont peut-être moins claires avec le public.
Who in this class has a relative that has a amputated leg?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Surtout quand ça vient à des issues qui ont affaire avec les populations autochtones du Canada. Puis quand les gens ils viennent après un screening puis ils disent « Ah, j'avais entendu parler de cette histoire-là, mais j'avais aucune idée que... » Ça, pour moi, c'est le vrai trésor.
Now at CBC Radio-Canada, we also have a lot of talent who are involved also in their own communities, and whether that comes to their involvement in programming or engagement at community events, or just through social media, which that's a huge area, of course. A couple of them are going to join us on our panel this afternoon as well and tell us how they've been involved.
Exactly, Marcy, because we have two special guests. Nous avons deux invités spéciaux aujourd'hui.
We have two special guests today, and we start with the first one. For 8 years already, he's played the part of Oli in the popular show called Les Parents, broadcasting on ICI Radio-Canada Télé. On top of being also associated to several causes, he co-developed and animated a documentary series called Raphaël Citoyen du Monde, where he met young francophones who are engaged in their community or abroad in the hopes of building a better world. Please welcome Raphaël Grenier-Benoit.
Also, please welcome to the stage the host of CBC Radio 2's Weekend Morning Show and CBC Television's weekly show, CBC Music Backstage Pass. Talia Schlanger has hosted the quietest concert ever as well on Fundy's Ocean Floor featuring Serena Ryder. It was an amazing show. I tuned in just this past week. I was so envious. A concert on an ocean floor. We'll hear more about that and how that inspired. Talia has been very involved in the music scene and has seen firsthand the power and the importance of community involvement and music when it comes especially to igniting and empowering. We've been using those words with our youth. We'll talk about that with her as well. From coast to coast, she's met young people, and she's here today. Talia. So we're going to begin our discussion, and I kind of want to go back to the start, to you, Erica, if that's okay. Now, I know that in your video, part of what you said was that you went to this event and you, for the first time, saw yourself and some of these other people as a young woman. Why did that matter, seeing yourself and someone else? Like, what did that do for you?
Well, I grew up with a lot of challenges, as well as a lot of the youth that we work with, very similar stories, and I don't know, like, it brings me a lot of pride to be able to work with young people who went through a lot of the same struggles as myself, and yeah, it just encourages me to help them and, you know, hopefully make an impact on their lives as well.
We hear a lot about people being closer to their culture and that helping people. You said, I think it helped you through a difficult time in your own life.
Yeah, like I said in the video, like, I grew up very disconnected and I didn't know really my true identity as an Indigenous person. And I feel like that's a struggle for a lot of our young people these days, is not understanding where they come from and who they are, and, you know, understanding how beautiful of a culture we really have. And that's one of my goals, is to, you know, do whatever I can to introduce our young people back to their culture and back to their identity as First Nations people.
Trésor, je vais m'adresser maintenant à vous. Eric.
Trésor, I'm going to talk to you now. Erica took her own culture, but you adopted a culture pretty quickly, in 4 years only. So what inspired you in your community? Well, I always said that I realized that Canada was an immigrant country. And why? Because I realized that we all come from somewhere. Nobody can say that I am a Canadian. But what inspired me is that even though we all come from somewhere else, we all have the Canadian ideal. I see unity in the diversity, and this is a strength. And I would like to live this way my whole life. This is what inspired me when I came to Manitoba. Not only live like that, but you quickly became a mentor for youth here in the community, and this is important, right? Yes, but you know that tomorrow's future lies in the youth of today. So we have to manage this youth to have better results in the future. So there's young people that are more interested in business, others are interested in music. So how to do to become a doctor? We still have to study, and you have to learn how to become a doctor. But there's youth now that are interested in music and that want also to bring their music and make it a career. I've had the chance to have a lot of mentorship through Son here in Manitoba. They always organize something to elevate us. But in another way, I find that all the things that I learn one way or another can be useful for the youth, especially young people my age or even people younger than me, to go even farther, because we want to see success in this youth.
Talking about finding inspiration here and inspiring in this country, seeing sort of an open door to being able to speak with young people. And we started, Jamil, by saying that you could have left, but you stayed here too. Why didn't you go, you know, to follow your studies and work with young people around the world?
Yeah, I fully intended to go back and work overseas, but having started working in the community and building connections in the neighborhood, I realized that a lot of the same issues that exist in developing nations existed in my own backyard and in Winnipeg, in inner city specifically. And so the opportunity to make a difference and change our youth life in this city was really important to me, and that I invest myself here.
When do you know you're making that difference? When, as I said, you start by facing something as daunting, and in your case it was in that neighborhood, as you know, a kid who was hurt on a playground, and people were moving out of that Winnipeg neighborhood at that time saying, it's not safe for my kids, and you said we can make it safe here. But when do you know you're making that difference?
I mean, the work we do is about connecting residents together and building their vision in their neighborhoods. So for me, the difference is seeing the resilience grow in our community, knowing how strong people are, knowing that we have a lot of issues in Canada. We have poverty, we have you know, effects of colonization, we have broken structures, you know, systemic violence. We have all these things that people wake up and have to deal with every day. And knowing that you can give a kid an opportunity to play sports or get into art or have a meal in a safe place to go, and that could change their whole life and give them an opportunity to make a difference for our whole city is how you know you're making a difference.
Why don't you tell everybody what you've done most recently? I'm bragging now for you. You got like a 24-hour youth drop-in because so many kids had nowhere to go in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it's not open yet. We're still fighting for the funding right now, but yeah, we hope by December we have a fully functioning 24-hour drop-in in the west end of Winnipeg. So.
Wow. Marcy, c'est à mon tour d'encourager.
Marcy, it's my turn to encourage my colleagues here. So, colleagues, you chose documentaries. Basically, you're explaining stories from here to people from elsewhere, but is that also community engagement? Yes. For me, as Franco-Métis, I'm part of a very small, unique group, so, you know, being able to boast about my community to the rest of the country, it's very important for me. And it's also an asset for my community.
To sort of debunk some of the myths that exist in our community. J'aime parler d'histoire.
I like to speak about the history of Métis, but also francophones outside of Quebec. So for me, it's good for my community, but also the rest of the country. And that started with your grandmother that we saw in the video. That was your grandmother. And at the same time, you were looking for what was going on. Yes, it was a rather interesting trip. We went through Métis about 10 years ago. So my grandmother is over there, and she's crying.
And what was so great about it was quand le produit est sorti.
When the product came out.
Product right now. Quand le produit est sorti.
When the product came out,
pour moi et pour mon frère, c'était.
For me and my brother, it was be able to say.
Elle a regardé le film, puis là, elle est en train de finalement.
My grandmother watched this. Her identity is there, Métis identity.
About her Ukrainian heritage, and that was never something we talked about before. So that contribution to my community is something that is very important to me.
Bonjour, mes mères.
Hello, mère.
Hello, mes mères. Hello, Granny.
Besides really cool concerts on ocean floors, which I'm going to ask you about later anyway, what do you think the role of a public broadcaster is in bringing communities together?
That is our role, really. I mean, we live in the second biggest country in the world, and it takes a public broadcaster with a lot of heart and a lot of attention from coast to coast to coast to bring people together in a way that's meaningful and that creates community across our country. It's a great privilege to be part of it. And I work in the music department, and one of the biggest joys that we have is discovering music from different regions and artists that you wouldn't otherwise hear. So we've done for the past few years the Searchlight competition, for example, where we look for Canada's best new artist, and we do it region by region and then bring those finalists to national focus. So you've got an electro-pop duo from Iqaluit and a death metal band from Vancouver, artists that you would otherwise never hear of coming together through music. And one of the most remarkable things that we've seen through that in terms of community is that some of these artists have reached out to each other through this online competition that we ran and offered couch surfing when each other are on tour and resources and meals. And that's really, it's fun and it's in the spirit of fun, but really that's what our public broadcaster ought to be doing, bringing people together so that they can bring the best of themselves forward and to each other. And I do look forward to telling you about how that happened in the Bay of Fundy with the amazing people of Alma, New Brunswick. Yeah.
Why music, do you think? Is music in a different place now because we consume it whatever we want, whenever we want, and it has that power in a different way, maybe? Because I also noticed, not just with your work, but on our panel, I think Just TV does music videos, and Tresor, of course, music. So what do you think it is about music today that has power that we should continue to try to harness?
I think it's always had that sort of power. It's a cliche, but it's true that music is a universal language. And actually, Jamil and I were talking earlier, and I think that the way that you employ music is so phenomenal. Jamil was telling me, and he can probably put it better than I can, but the gist of it is that youth in the correctional center are given guitar and piano lessons. And then when they leave, they continue to get those guitar and piano lessons. So it's that sort of link between this institutionalized world and the outside. Have I done justice to what you guys do?
That's it. It's called Music at the Merc.
What's it called? Sorry, I missed
Music at the Merc.
Music at the Merc.
Which is the rec center down the road from here, so.
C'est drôle parce que ce qui revient souvent.
It's funny because what often comes back with young people, you talk about music, videos. Raphael, you're an actor and you co-developed a documentary. How did you get into that? Well, I co-developed a documentary series that put the emphasis on humanitarian aid done by young youth, either in their communities or abroad. And I met the producers and the parents, and we'd like to have a program with you. What would you like to do? And that was the greatest present I could have been given. So I think what's important for me in that program is to put in the spotlight what's done by youth that's positive. Because we hear, you know, young people today, they don't do anything, they're lazy, they're disconnected, they're not interested, blah, blah. And I feel like just yelling out loud and breaking stuff. And I speak to people around me, and it's the same sound from everybody. So we have to give those young people a voice so that they can help create a better world and not become cynical, not give in to the cynicism around them. And I would ask the young people around me, do you think that what you're doing is helping people that you want to help, or does it help you more? And the answers were sort of half and half, but people would say at the end of the day, would say, I do this because it changes me and it's good for me. So if it gave youngsters the will to get involved, etc., I mean, it's not that hard to have an impact. I get the impression that, you know, people who see the big picture, there's people who came from Saguenay that were in Africa, out in the fields there, and they're working with the young people there to try to prevent malnutrition. And I'm saying, look, these guys, they have doctorates, they have university degrees, and they're here doing this. So I figure, yeah, if we identify with them, we can see that we can make a difference. And really, for me, that's the message I get from that experience. And did that change you? Well, yeah. That's why I often say that program for me was a discovery professionally, but also humanly. I learned how to host, how to co-host. I had the process of developing the program. Professionally, I learned a lot, but on the human level, if it's just to see what reality is being, when you're a foreigner or a stranger, you show up in Africa or you show up in South America and they call you, hey, whitey. So, you know, it's that experience, meeting all those people. I mean, I was optimistic for youth and all that, but I'm even more optimistic now.
In terms of your ages now and at what ages you started to really get involved in your communities. And it's very interesting because it was all around the same age, late teens or early 20s. And it is an age where you could completely do the opposite. Disconnect, say it's all about me, I'm finally out the house, off I go. Yet all of you decided, no, we're going to somehow give back, I can't not do this. And I just want to go down the line. Is that because you saw the need for something, or what is it that made you say, you know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to devote a lot of my time to this because it's worth it?
Well, for me, it was the program that I was involved with at the Broadway Neighborhood Center, and it was the staff that really made an impact on my life and the choices that I was making. So that's what kind of pushed me, like, no matter how far I went down the wrong path, it was always those people that were there to pick me up again and bring me back. And so that's kind of why I do what I do, is because I seen what they did for me, and that's what I want to do for my community.
Well, for me, I realized that I was inspired by my father because my father was a CEO in a business, a center for recovering street kids, and I had the opportunity to see what was going on there, and I figured the best way to work in my life was to serve youth and serve others because I like it. And what he was doing, he would go into the street where the kids were smoking all kinds of, you know, and doing stuff that happens with street kids, and he tried to get those children to the center, and after that bring those kids back and get them to go back to school and give them an opportunity to live a better life. And when I got to Manitoba, I realized that there's huge potential with youth, but it's as though we don't see it. In one way or another, we just see, kids that are distracted. They're there just to, for music, to have fun, as you said. But no, it's false. It's not that at all. And when I started working with young kids, I noticed that these are people who want things, who have dreams that they want to achieve. Well, Trésor, you said there was a model from your family, your father, and I was curious to know, the others, do you have a model from your family that was also committed with the community, or did this just come from yourselves and inside yourselves? Trésor, go ahead. Well, what inspired me to get out there with the community, I come from an exogamous family. It's popular. It means I have one parent Anglophone, the other one Francophone. So, and during my life, I discovered I was a Métis. So, I had a foot here and a foot there and the other foot somewhere else. So, for me,
about all these other groups, because I was like sort of in all of them, and I could see the misconceptions that existed about other people, other groups. So that's kind of what drove me to become a documentary filmmaker,
because what is really my passion and motivation is to debunk myths that exist about Francophone communities or Métis communities. And when I hear people saying about an issue, talking about an issue,
something wrong, it like makes me insane, and c'est ce qui me passionne. I'm like,
and that's my passion.
So many stories that we've done have been stories that have appeared in the media over the course of months, sometimes years. And they're distributed to the public in an article and another article the next week and a 2-minute news story here. And to me, putting it all together and then explaining it to people in a way they can understand it, c'est ce qui me motive comme docteur.
And that's what really motivates me when...
j'avais entendu parler de cette...
I'd heard about that story, but I never understood
what had really happened and who was the real victim and who were the players in that. So thank you. So c'est ce qui me motive.
So that's what motivates me.
Yeah, they're here, so I can't say too much about.
Jamil, what is your greatest wish, your biggest dream for your community?
Oh, how can you have one? There's so many. For me, like everything we do at Spence and in my community and all my staff is we take the vision from the neighborhood and we make it happen. So my vision, Spence is the best neighborhood in the city. It's so vibrant, it's so diverse, and my vision is that it keeps growing and we're able to develop our neighborhood without displacing our current residents and meet the needs. We have high levels of poverty and we have gang problems and we have a lot of issues, but those are all things that can be addressed if we work with community and build strong foundation.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we have time to come back to Talia. Elle parlait d'un concert.
Oh, she was talking about a concert.
J'ai pas oublié, là.
Yes, so this...
Yeah, I hadn't forgotten it.
Serena Ryder, we should come back there and share for people that wonderful show on CBC. But the community event of it, the value of it when you were there, maybe set it up for us. The Bay of Fundy, right?
Sure, yeah, I think that was the coolest part. So the Bay of Fundy, if you haven't been there before, it's home to the highest tides in the world. At right around this time of year, they go out incredibly far, twice a day, so like the length of 2 football fields, and expose the ocean floor. And a sort of wild genius in our department, Kai Black, came up with the idea of building a stage when the tide went out and throwing a concert on the ocean floor. Simple, very simple undertaking. And Serena Ryder was crazy enough and her band to be up to the task and do it. But the amazing thing was, logistically, what this required us to do was helicopter a stage down the side of a cliff. And we were going into Alma, New Brunswick. Most of us from my department are based in Toronto. And Alma's a tiny place, a couple hundred people, 3 restaurants, a couple of motels that we completely overbooked by being there. And yet we got there, and the entire community was so enthusiastic to take part and make this happen and show their slice of Canada to the rest of the country. And the support that we felt from them even from our local CBC Moncton crew, the fact that we all came together and pulled this thing off. It was just an amazing moment of community and sharing the beauty of our country with each other. And it was really fun that it aired this past Friday night, and a bunch of the people that we worked with in Alma, including the Parks Canada staff and even the hotel, like the motel staff that we had worked with, watched it together at the same time and were tweeting about it together online. So our hashtag was trending because we were all engaging with each other about this experience that we have had, you know, halfway across, well, on the other coast, far away from us. So, and it's stuff like that. It was just such a beautiful slice of Canadiana, and makes me so proud to be part of a public broadcaster that can bring people together like that. It just for pure positivity, like pure celebration of our geography and our talent and the heart of the people who work here.
We have a big beach here in Manitoba.
We can co-host. Maybe we'll come there next. We need a big raft.
C'est vraiment impressionnant.
It's really impressive, and I wonder, I mean, you've all done great stuff, so how can we encourage other young people to do the same thing that you did, just jump into it? And you've met all kinds of people. Raphael, how can we continue with this sort of wave of commitment? I think it goes through two things. First of all, you work through example. When I see people who actually fight for their ideals, their values, who have an impact, that inspires me. And that's why actually I worked on a series of documentaries. That I want to have that impact. I want to be able to say that what I did encouraged others to do something that they wanted to do. But I think it's also, you have to be encouraged. I mean, we were talking about parents before. Well, if I could summarize, I could maybe say that my parents, the way they influenced me, was ever since I'm young, I'm little. Anytime I wanted to do something or I was interested in something, the answer was, nothing is impossible. You want to do it, do it. And the only limits you have are the limits you put on yourself. So basically, and I'm not trying to be pretentious or anything here, it's just that if you don't know how it can work, I mean, you have to try it. So I think that's how that we can encourage young people to have an impact. It's to show them, one, that it's feasible, and number two, that they can do it. Yes, nothing is impossible. Beach concert, bingo.
What you do, and what all of our panelists, and I'm very honored to sit up here with you, what you do is really help people share their stories. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of it, is that when young people, young or old people, are able to share their stories, it legitimizes experience and brings people together, because everyone does have a story that is untold, and there's always more than meets the eye. And it's just so amazing that each of you help people share their stories and therefore feel part of something and valid and valued. That's what we do in media too. Sometimes we don't have enough time to do those stories justice, but even the simple act of asking a question or being there with somebody or finding out their story on the small scale to the big screen is really what it's about.
And probably critical. Thank you all for giving us those access points today. It can feel overwhelming how to make those differences. That's sort of where we started with some of our opening questions. But here we've heard today, through mentorship, through art, through volunteering, through music, through all kinds of different ways in real differences being made. So that does wrap up the part of our presentations this morning, our youth panel. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.
Vraiment une discussion.
Really an inspiring discussion. I can see my boss is here in the room. So that's how we're ending this second part of the annual public meeting. If you want to continue this discussion with our youth panel, you can go on to Twitter. Tell us who inspired you, how your community is unique, and use the hashtag CBC Community.
Afternoon, use the hashtag CBC Community. Tell us who inspires you and what makes your community unique across Canada. We'd love to hear your stories. It is now time to begin our question and answer period. Your turn to ask your questions and have your say. Before we begin answering and taking questions from across the country, let's fill up the stage with those who will answer. So, Rémi Racine, Humer Lacroix, I welcome you back to the stage. I'd also like to invite Heather Conway, Executive Vice President of English Services, Louis Lalonde, Vice-Président Principal Service Français, John Bertrand, Senior Managing Director, Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and Pierre Guérin, Directeur des Services Français, Région de l'Ouest, also to join us on stage. How did I do?
Very good. Très bien, merci.
Thank you. My husband.
You did very well.
Everyone available to answer your questions about CBC Radio Canada, and a reminder that people on the web all across the country are submitting questions today via Twitter and through email.
Carla, Marcy, just a second.
Yes.
I have to thank you for an amazing job putting together these stories. How can you not be inspired? This is what the public broadcaster tries to do, trying to influence, trying to share ideas, trying to engage in communities. One of our very important piece in the 2020 strategy is using the engagement in communities as our fifth platform, and we thank you very, very much. It was spectacular.
Alors, rapidement, avant de poser...
So quickly before going to questions here, just to remind you, for people here in the room, there's a microphone that is there. Yes, there it is. There's a microphone there. So if you want to put questions, short questions, one question per person, and the people up in the galleries can come downstairs up to the mic. So for the people on the web, in French, APA at Radio-Canada, in English, APM at CBC. And in French, you can Twitter RCC Community, and in hashtag in English, CBC.
Convocation Hall, once again, en anglais, so if you want to make your way down to the microphone at the back of the room. One question, we're going to try to get as many questions in as we can, so if you are at the microphone, if you care to share your name, that would be great, but it's not something that we require you to do. And also a reminder for those here in the room today, because of course we are all here together, the panelists will take some of the questions on site after the event as well, so there will be a little bit of time for that. And now let's begin. Our first question, I believe, comes on online.
Oui, alors c'est une question qui vient de Twitter.
So this is a question from Twitter. It's for Hubert Lacroix. Comes from Joël Lafont. And Joël is asking, Radio-Canada is going through important decreases in funding. What models of funding can be used, and how do we do it? I'll try to answer the question in both languages. I'll start with the language the question was put in. In an environment like ours, absolutely have to have conversations on the financial model. I mean, for months now, we've been saying that in such a disparate environment, based on a model where publicity income was giving us a sort of a balance between parliamentary budgets that were decreasing, and I mean there are governments over the years that had different models. So if publicity revenue disappears from that equation, we have to replace that income in some way. There's all kinds of models in France, in Spain, a part of or a percentage of the income from the internet service providers is given elsewhere. There's a tax that is imposed on people when they buy a TV set, like in England. Others, you have a household fee, a tax that depends on your environment, where you live. There's all kinds of funding levels, and we'll try to have a conversation on how to fund it.
Multi-year way, the public broadcaster. This is a conversation for Canadians.
Our second question, also for Hubert, Louis, or Heather. It's from Brian Hill online. How will CBC remain an impartial public broadcaster as advertising revenues increase in importance?
Heather, I saw you jump on that question.
Yeah, you know, we're not influenced by advertisers in terms of our editorial decisions or our content. There are opportunities for advertisers who want to participate in creation and dispersion of great content. We see it with lots of amateur athletes who need support. I know that for our Parapan athletes as well, there's lots of corporations and sponsors who genuinely want to support those athletes, and they want to participate in some of the content creation that goes on. But it's not, you know, we're very, very clear on where the line is between the editorial content and the entertainment value of a show, and where the intersection is between the advertiser's interests. It's an issue that a lot of entertainment companies are grappling with, you know, and sometimes, you know, it's usually pretty obvious. If you have too much advertiser, it's bad television. If you have, you know, a great TV show that doesn't get any advertising, that's also usually bad television if no one's attracted to it. So it's a...
I also think that we have a very clear distinction between the mandate that we have as a public broadcaster and the importance of keeping that distance with respect to any kind of commercial interest or corporate interest that we would have. So, and we have a board and we have all sorts of methods by which we ensure that that independence is kept.
Heather, you can keep the microphone. This is also online. It's directed, the question for you. It says, how are you addressing your mandate as it relates to Aboriginal programming specifically?
Well, I mean, I think John Bertrand can also speak to this issue because in terms of our radio and digital operations, we have, they're headquartered here for our digital for the cbc.ca/Aboriginal website, which is, I'm delighted to say, one of the most active and popular websites for First Nations that we have in this country. We are also involved in all kinds of radio programming. I think those of you who enjoyed New Fire with Lisa Charlie Boy this summer on CBC Radio 1, and we have a new show called Unreserved, also not a summer show, but a permanent show now that was developed here in Winnipeg. In terms of television, I've met with Jean LaRose a couple of times at APTN, and we are going to be co-producing a documentary series with APTN about the missing and murdered, and that's going to start production this fall. And I'll pass it to John for...
We are very much engaged. Part of our mandate here is to connect and reflect Indigenous people right across the country. The diversity of Indigenous people, the dynamic nature and change that is going on all across the country. And we are, I think, beginning to tell more stories, better stories, deeper stories, and stories that really resonate from the community and don't come from an agenda or a press conference or just from conflict. Stories that I think really challenge some of the stereotypes that are still inherent in this country. So we've got a ways to go. It's not all there yet, but I like some of the things that we're doing.
I'd just add two things. One, you know, we aired Blackstone, which was a great series produced by APTN. And our feeling was not enough people saw that series. You know, APTN does not have the leverage and marketing budgets that the CBC does. And so we felt by putting it on the CBC, it would expose it to a whole bunch of people who would otherwise never see it. And so we did that. And the other thing that we're doing is our news departments are all looking for and identifying Aboriginal spokespeople and experts on non-Aboriginal issues. There are Aboriginal economists, there are Aboriginal doctors, there are Aboriginal, and often what you see in the media is people turn to an Aboriginal spokesperson only on an Aboriginal issue. And that, again, sort of keeps that community in a place that isn't appropriate and isn't, you know, fully showcasing all the skills and expertise.
Thank you. So, je vous ai parlé beaucoup de mots.
I told you a lot about email and hashtags and stuff, but there are people in the room that have questions.
For Mr. Hubert Lacroix, because when there is a question that's really important, or a request that's really important, take it right to the top. Cross-country checkup has been a very, very important thing in my life, but it's also been important to us as Canadians. It's really pulled us together from across the country, and I'm glad to see that it's continuing despite the departure of our host of the last 21 years. Because what it does is it makes sure that important issues are not silenced. Here in this country, many women and men who want to see an egalitarian and a just and a healthy society were very disappointed that the women's debate got shut down. But we have another opportunity. We have a cross-country forum, an ability to bring in voices from coast to coast to coast, to make sure that these issues that women recognize are important, but are important to all of us in society, get properly addressed in a way that they have done. So my request is that we have that we have a cross-country checkup show that focuses in on women's issues before we have to go to the polls, please.
I heard, thank you, and you have the people in front of the room who are listening.
Thank you, thank you. A request, nonetheless, not a question. So just remind you to try to pose in terms of a question. We will take a question from the floor. If you wanted to walk up to the mic, let us know who you are and what your question is. Yeah, we're just making our way to the microphone here in the hall at University of Winnipeg. Hello there.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Je me présente.
Hi everyone, I'm Mona Odette. I'm a grandma of 2 little grandchildren. I'm a mom of 3 daughters, and I'm a treasurer of CFA of Canada, so I'm an implicated francophone. So you know that the law on broadcasting tells to CBC to reflect the diversity of Canada at the provincial and national level. So I'm okay with changes. I know that we have to revise some things, but as a grandma, as a mom, as a francophone, I would like to know. And the 1 out of 2 that you said of CBC, I watch TV, I listen to the radio, I used to listen to Vincent Duro with his interviews. I love CBC, Radio-Canada, and my friends here know it. But reinventing CBC, wouldn't it be talking about the 2.6 million? We had the proof during the Chiefs debate. There was no question about the francophones in Quebec. So does that mean that as the management of Pluriel, the CBC will help me to promote my organization and to reach my community? And for example, in social work, maybe make some social changes in our francophone communities. So what does that mean? So I'm asking CBC to really revisit their things. I am a francophone, I pay taxes, and I ask that CBC Radio-Canada represents me and helps me to do my work as a promoter and as a community service provider. I heard your comments, ma'am. Can I address? Because there wasn't really a question in your intervention. The question is, how are you going to keep helping me and change your things to keep representing me? So I'm going to talk, and Louis will talk about the importance to our presence in the region, because we always said it. We cannot be a public broadcaster without being completely rooted in the public. So since 2008, there was a thesis to our plan towards 2011 and towards 2015 and now 2020. I talk about it because it was discussed for a long time. The debate was under 5 big themes. These 5 big themes had as a goal in a French debate of 2 hours to be as inclusive as possible, to talk about subjects that interested everyone, every Canadian from coast to coast to coast, and that did not represent the interests of one group in particular. So we made these questions in that aim, an inclusive aim. But we have to remind that our objective of covering the campaign, and I think we did it well, is that to make sure that everywhere in Canada, everywhere we share, that the issues that are local, municipal, provincial, and national be dealt with by the quality and the interventions of all our journalists. So during these 2 hours, yes, we did talk to the whole Francophone Canada and to the people that wanted to be interested in us. But Louis, could you talk about the importance that we give and the changes we made to reflect the regions and the feedback we got? Well, first of all, I would say that through everything you heard that was negative about Radio-Canada, the regional Francophone presence is more important. The interpreter could not hear the intervention. No, but what I said bad things were like cuts and ill effects. I was just trying to say that through these challenges, which are constant and that we had to face, the Francophone presence in Radio Canada is more important than it was 5 years ago. Physical presence, presence on different platforms, presence on the radio, on TV, but also on social media. And I know that you use social media very well. But I'd like to remind you that 5 years ago, I had conversations here in Winnipeg when I was meeting people from the community. And we were asking at that time, when will CBC take care of having an offer in French on social media and on digital media? And it was a whole challenge at the time. And today, since 1 week, we really have, as you can see, an active cover of digital platforms 18 hours a day, and we're present on TV and on the radio with news 7 days a week, and that wasn't the case before. So with that, with all our efforts, our presence was improved. And maybe you want to add something specifically on your challenges? No, I don't think so. Unless there was something more precise on what's happening here. Let's talk about the Vincent Duro's show. People that were coming to radio to CBC in the afternoon. I liked it because it allowed me to understand the success stories in our communities. Maybe Mona, I will explain for people on the web because we're in Manitoba. The interpreter cannot hear anything. So maybe for you outside of Manitoba, here in Manitoba, there's 1 hour radio that we used to have last season. The grid was transformed, and this place is not here anymore. So I didn't mean that it vanished, but it was transformed. It was put somewhere else. It was transformed to be to fit with what is going on in the country. And the show we like with Vincent, and I was talking during the meeting of the board this morning, we're going to see those changes on those websites instead of the radio. But we can see that it's the engagement of the communities, and I think that everyone heard it. We're going to go on with another French question that comes through email. It's a question for Hubert Lacroix. What is the place of young people in CBC Radio Canada? Well, you saw it today. You heard it. You heard Raphael. You heard the number of talents. We try to help to support our plan for 2020. You see all the efforts that we make to try to understand this new generation, because they consume products on a totally different way. We just need time to support the public broadcaster who is more and more interested in being relevant in the digital environment, that it's completely different from the one we know.
Hi, I'm Tracy and I'm an Indigenous student, and my question is directed to basically everybody. So from what our panelists are doing, what they have shared, they're doing an amazing job at helping our youth in the city, especially considering Winnipeg is the most racist city in the country. But my question is, what is CBC going to come together to do, not only now, but in a long-term plan to get the youth more involved in CBC radio, broadcasting, media, all of it together, not just Indigenous youth, but all youth together to make sure that they have a better tomorrow.
So direct efforts to get youth more involved to improve their futures. Not sure who wants to start.
One of the things, and Marcy was involved in it, and she may be able to just comment on it, we had a project called Future 40, which identified these fantastic people who were change makers under 40 in this city, and we invited all of them, 30 came out with some additional people, for a forum on racism. And they closed the door. It was not about making a whole bunch of programming. It was about leading a conversation. And it was very impactful. I had so much feedback. But more than that, and it was great that these people were involved, I think the people for CBC learned a lot. Because for us to make great programming, we have to understand the community. We have to know what people are saying and what they care about and what their passions are and all of those sorts of things. And we need to reach out in more and more ways like that. I would say the Indigenous site, it has one of the most active social media presences in CBC, and it is all about Indigenous youth all across the country. It is incredible conversations, and we know that so much is happening in that space that, again, is not about a press conference or about something that's going to be on the immediate agenda, but it's about being a part of a conversation that we're not currently part of right now, and we need to continue to do that.
I think Louis wants to add something.
Oui, je vais te répondre en français.
I'm going to reply in French. Of course, I think the first thing we have to do is to make sure that young people have a spot in everything CBC does. So it's giving the opportunity to young people, like young authors, young movie makers, young people that have ideas, that have passion, to make sure that these people can realize what they're trying to do. And CBC must be a reception hub of ideas to make sure we can help them realize and broadcast these ideas. And this already exists, it's going to keep on existing, and we're going to do everything we can to keep on doing it, and we have examples in all areas.
Touch a lot more young people than people think. We have an incredible reach with millennials in this country, especially through CBC News. We also announced last week a partnership with Fullscreen, which is a multi-channel network that manages 2,000 Canadian internet YouTube stars. And we are helping to develop talent there, and they're helping us to learn about how young people are creating their own shows through that.
I just wanted to add, because John invited me to add with that event, it was very interesting. You mentioned millennials. I'm a Gen Xer. Millennials didn't want me to be there to be covering their story. They didn't want me to be there that day to be telling their story in some ways, even though it may have led to that. Millennials want to tell their own stories and be heard. They are a force to be reckoned with, this generation, and that day, at least, I felt like at least CBC Manitoba, the best thing we did was probably turn the cameras off. And it's just a new time. The whole industry is changing, and the whole move to digital reflects that. And so the more I think we can do those types of events, while it's a different place for us to live, especially as journalists, it's a very different place for us to sort of come to understand stories. It's still a place of learning. So yeah, it was an interesting event here.
Millenniums born before me, after me, right? Yeah.
I think I have 10 years.
On va rester dans la salle.
Keep it in the room. I have a question. Hi, my name is Laurence Lemaire. I work here in Winnipeg with Janelle and Jeremy in documentaries. And my question is for Mr. Lacroix. Considering the current state of CBC and knowing that there were job cuts east to west in several stations in the country, and knowing that we are in election time, is CBC's future supposed to be an electoral challenge? The conversations we hear about CBC at the moment come from some parties that seem to have taken some positions. In such an environment, our role, our part is to listen, but especially at the level of the public broadcaster, is to make sure that our reporters keep covering the most important electoral issues, and not to give opinions on those, but to give you a variety of opinions, so you too can make your own opinion and to come to a conclusion, to be better informed when you go to vote on the 19th of October. In this context, it's our pleasure to take act on the conversation that regard the public broadcaster. But there's no questions or revendications, special revendications or demands from the public broadcaster. No, it's a crown society that should not have in an electoral period to advocate. We cannot do that kind of things. We have to make sure, however, that our reporters do their jobs to cover throughout Canada, in all environments, in all provinces, in all stations, the electoral issues, so as to meet our journalistic procedures and standards.
For Hubert as well, are you planning on selling all of your buildings as reported by the media in these last few weeks? And if so, why?
I really had to smile on this one, sorry.
Sure.
I don't want to belabor this point, this is an important one. But since 2011, in the context of the strategic direction we took, and again in 2015, this is all about being more efficient, looking at our square footage, making sure that we take the resources that we have in walls and unused space and reinvesting it in content. We've reinventing ourselves, for example, in Halifax. In Halifax, we were in two buildings, two separate buildings, about 700 or 800 meters from each other, on 7 different floors. Really complicated to try to work together in this kind of environment, right? So we actually moved all of these people into a 43,000 square foot new space. Everybody applauded. There were 3,000 people lined up at the door that visited our new spaces last week, or actually a month ago. We did the same thing in Moncton. We reinvented ourselves in Matane, in Rimouski, in Saskatoon. When we do this, it has a plan, it is thought out, and there's a purpose to it. We're just not, there's no fire sale going on, and there's no news around our strategy on real estate. It's been open and very transparent since 2011.
Merci Hubert. Alors,
thanks Hubert. So we're going to continue in the room.
President of one of the CBC's unions. Mr. Lacroix, thank you for having a meeting today and talking about the CBC and its future. Under your leadership, you have implemented unprecedented and damaging cuts on the CBC, massive numbers, 2,000 staff, some 25%, crippling the CBC's ability to produce award-winning documentaries, to do quality Canadian programming, and to cover the news effectively across the country in French, English, and 8 Aboriginal languages. We heard you in Germany for the first time admit that you had been wrong in not raising the alarm earlier. We welcome that. And today, again, for the first time...
Do you have a clear question?
Yes, I'm getting to my question. For the first time, we hear you being very clear that the CBC is in a crisis. Thank you for that. I have 2 questions. What brought about your change of heart? And what are your plans to address it? How are you going to secure better funding for the CBC? And just one last thing. Given in this recent election campaign, we have seen increasing support for the CBC, including 3 of the 4 political parties pledging more money, better funding, and reversing the $115 million cut. Will you also be clear in that the way Canadians vote will affect the future of the CBC and Radio-Canada?
All right, Carmel, as you know, we've had this conversation many times before. Carmel is the head of the CMG. That's about half of our staff, so it's not the first time that we've interacted on this subject matter. And she will get the same answer she has unfortunately received all these times. So there's no surprise here either. To say that this is the first time that we've been clear about the model in which we are fighting for public broadcasting is not quite accurate. If you go back to the speeches that are public on our website, to the first speech I made in 2008 en face de la Chambre de commerce de Montréal.
Right across the Chamber of Commerce in Montreal.
The comments in Munich were about the whole of the public broadcasters in the world, because we all share the same issues. We all have the same issues. I can actually, and I did this, I can actually start reading you Mark Scott, who's got my job in Australia, his last speech. And you're going to find that the words are exactly the same ones that apply to us in Canada. You can listen to Tony Hall at the BBC, the Director General there, his last speech on the regions. They're actually inspiring their speeches with our experiences. We talk all the time. My point in Munich, the point I repeated last week in front of deputy ministers in Ottawa, the point I'm trying to make again today, is that we've been very busy in trying to manage a really difficult environment filled with challenges of change, with the audiences changing the way they change, the way that you guys change the way you consume our products, our services, at the same time where we've had shrinking resources. In that environment, CBC Radio-Canada has done a really smart turn. I see it taking form. I see what we're doing more and more in this relationship one-on-one happening, and it's going to accelerate, because if ever dollars came to us, we're not going back to the CBC of the years behind. We would accelerate the changes we're doing. We would accelerate the virage, the technological and the move towards digital. We would actually accelerate trying to give Louis and Heather more dollars for their content, whether it's radio, television, or online. We would accelerate this and not go back to what we were before. We can't go back, and we won't.
We're taking our next question from the floor. Thank you.
Merci, Walter Kleinschmidt.
Thank you. Walter Kleinschmidt from St. Boniface. I'd like to go back on the question regarding the rationalization of the assets of CBC, and to ask Mr. Lacroix, who will be in the board, that he brings to the board next week a motion that would promise that the public assets, the archives, the interviews, the microscience, everything that was collected and that's part of the heritage and culture of Canada, not be spread out and not be gotten rid of, as other libraries have done, and as CKSB did several months ago when they took all their stuff and they put it in a back room in a store to be sold at 25 cents. We lost all the heritage of the evolution of Francophone music in Manitoba, all the discs that were bought, there were comments. It was an incredible story that vanished without anyone knowing. Mr. Kleinschmidt, do you have a question? Yeah, I would like a promise from the board that when they move or sell buildings, we do not throw in the trash all the archives of the history of Canada that we had the chance, for which we paid, that we developed, and that CBC put together. So it's a demand, it's a request. Yes, I can give you a little context. CBC does not throw away the heritage, it keeps it. No, all of CKSB's discs were sold. No, I have to correct you. All the important discs in the history of Francophone music were kept. What was sold or left to the community were doubles and triples. They were not items that were a part of the history of music. It's the same process that we use everywhere. And I would like to tell you that we're about to announce the creation of a heritage committee to reassure the Canadian people, to tell them that every time something that shines out in such a context, make sure that the best specialists of conservation are going to consult with Radio-Canada and CBC to make sure there is no abuse. I can reassure you, and Pierre might be able to confirm, that the Manitoba musical heritage was not thrown out. I can see that I've seen the discs myself with notes from Couture and others that were saying, listen to this, do not listen to this. It's history, it's the evolution of what we are hearing. And there would have been incredible archives. If you can keep talking with Patrick. He's going to take note of all of this. We have to understand that it might be something particular in Manitoba that's specific to Manitoba. Maybe it happened somewhere else. But we're talking about several types of archives. We're talking about interviews, written documents. We have agreements with the Center for Heritage. There are things that are for successions. There is an unprecedented effort for the preservation of audio and video archive and this heritage. We know that it is our responsibility to protect it. And as Louis said, the discs that we let go, for the most part, and I remember I was there, for the most part, there were doubles, triples, and there were things that were preserved somewhere else, or that were preserved in another format, maybe in a digital format. Thank you.
Back to the room. I just want to go online. Remember, we're taking questions from across the country this afternoon. This question is directed online. It was emailed. This is for Heather. It says, will CBC be investing in online platforms similar to Netflix?
Like an over-the-top player? There is a CBC player. You can go on and you can find CBC programs on the CBC player. I know we are looking at updating our player. It's had some creaky issues in the last 6 months or so, and we have picked a vendor, and we'll be implementing that shortly. So we do have an over-the-top ability for Canadians to look at our shows, and it's all free. And of course, our shows are available as well in the on-demand services of most of the distributors in the country.
I have a question. Is it like Tout.tv, kind of, like in French?
It's a different model. The player is just CBC content. Tout.tv has alternate content as well and has different levels.
Thank you very much. So we went to the web. We're going back to the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Khalid Mahmood, and I am a member of the local Ahmadiyya Muslim Association. A recent debate, we heard, unfortunately, the real issue of the women's are not being addressed at the time, like missing indigenous women, women trafficking, and poverty and violence against women. But one issue came, and it was about the niqab, which I think is non-issue, but I think that's what in the forefront. And I'd like to thank you and appreciate that CBC is giving the balanced coverage on this issue. To me, it's a non-issue. There's a very 0.01%, I think there's only one women that came in the front and now is the headline.
And while we appreciate your comments on that topic, do you have a direct question?
Yeah, but that question is that I hope that CBC should give him more a balanced coverage on this issue to educate it more to the Canadian people so they can understand this issue. And I think that because the CBC has only one avenue of the air in the habit, so you have that responsibility to give a balanced and unbiased coverage, and I thank you what you're actually doing it. I appreciate what I'm hearing on the news, and I hope that you will continue to do that. So, have any comment in that? I will appreciate that.
Thank you for that. We heard your comment.
Okay, we have. Thank you for your comment, sir. We have a last question from the floor now.
Exactly.
I'll ask my question in French and in English. Ça sera plus rapide.
It'll be faster. My name is Gabriel Gosselin. I'm in charge of communications and information of the Division Scolaire Franco-Manitobaine.
Former Radio-Canadien, a former CBC journalist with Radio-Canada. I think we can all agree that it's very important that the CBC be available on all platforms. Je pense qu'on est tous d'accord pour dire que
I think we all agree to say that the offer of CBC should be better served on all platforms. What's more nebulous, however,
how both corporations are going to interact in the future. Ce qui est plus nébuleux, c'est comment les
what's more nebulous is how both corporations are going to interact in the future. Are they the same? Are we going to see more symbiosis or more synergy in the offer in English and in French?
Symbiosis in the offer that is made both in French and in English in the future. And if I can, one comment, un commentaire.
One comment, if I can. Oui, très
comme personne qui consomme et CBC et Radio-Canada, as a person CBC and Radio-Canada, I would really...
As a person that consumes both, j'aimerais voir...
de Radio-Canada être plus rapide. Surtout dans mon métier, on attend très longtemps.
J'aimerais que les sites soient plus rapides. Alors...
Are we going to see with the new transformation more symbiosis in offer?
Okay, thank you.
On est très conscient. I know we're running out of time. On est très conscient.
We're really conscious of both publics, and we know what we can do together. When I see John and Pia working together in Manitoba on the news delivery and on how they're going to be welcomed, on the infrastructures that are combining, it's really important to be as efficient as possible, all at the same time respecting the local, regional, and provincial publics. So yes, we really know this. We always talk about it at the board. The goal is to respect the audiences in the mandate that we have to declare, inform, and entertain. Thank you very much, Hubert. Unfortunately, our time is limited today, so this is what puts an end to the third and last part of our annual public meeting. I was about to say a general meeting, but that's not this at all. A little tip before we leave you, even for people online, the questions that will be asked the most will be, the most frequently asked question will be displayed on our website within 1 week. So keep asking them today. So I remind you the addresses in French, appa@radio-canada.ca.
cbc.ca et merci beaucoup de votre participation à cette assemblée publique.
Ask your questions at 8 p.m. at cbc.ca. Thank you for being at our assembly today in Winnipeg.
To all of our speakers and our presenters for the questions, the answers, and a good discussion here in Winnipeg. Whether you participated here in Convocation Hall at the University of Winnipeg or online, please take Carla's advice. Continue the conversation online. Send your questions in to your public broadcaster, and the most frequently asked questions will be answered. There's a Jets game tonight, if you care to go. We have a long way to make playoffs. Thank you across the country for participating in CBC Radio Canada's annual public meeting. Thank you.
Bonne fin de journée.